The scent of jasmine and earth-damp moss hit me before I even saw the flower stall. Spring had come early to the city this year, turning the Saturday farmers market into a riot of color that made my fingers itch for my sketchbook. I'd left it at home, a small apartment 3 subway stops from anything remotely resembling my old life, because today was supposed to be simple. Groceries, fresh air, normal things that normal people did. 6 months of normal. 6 months of pretending I hadn't fled from a marriage that had shattered every illusion I'd ever held about love. I paused at a vendor selling heirloom orchids, the kind I used to illustrate for botanical journals before my world imploded. My hand hovered over a pale lavender phalaenopsis, its petals veined with deeper purple like watercolor bleeding across wet paper. The owner, an elderly woman with soil under her fingernails, smiled at me with the warmth reserved for fellow plant lovers. "Rare hybrid," she said in a voice roughened by decades of greenhouse work. "Temperamental, but worth the effort." Aren't they all, I thought, but didn't say aloud. The market stretched along 3 blocks of closed-off street, vendors hawking everything from organic honey to hand-forged knives. Crowds moved in lazy currents around me, families with strollers, couples holding hands, elderly men debating the merits of various tomato varieties. I let myself blend into the anonymity of it. Just another woman in a long cardigan and jeans, her dark auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. The cardigan was doing its job, mostly. At 5 months, my pregnancy was becoming harder to hide. The swell of my abdomen pronounced enough that I'd stopped wearing anything fitted. Neve, my best friend, and the only person who knew the truth, had warned me that baggy clothes would only work for so long. "You can't hide forever, Willa," she'd said over coffee last week, using the nickname I'd adopted professionally. He's going to find out eventually. But eventually wasn't today. Eventually was some distant future problem I'd deal with when forced to. I moved on from the orchid vendor, weaving through the crowd with the ease of someone who'd spent 6 months learning to be invisible. My old life. The penthouse overlooking the harbor, the gallery openings, the charity galas where I'd smile on Liam's arm while men in expensive suits discussed things I wasn't supposed to understand, felt like a fever dream now. That Circe had been young, naive, willfully blind to the truth about the man she'd married. This Willa knew better. I was examining a bunch of ranunculus, their paper-thin petals reminding me of the illustrations I needed to finish for the Museum of Natural History, when I felt it. That prickle of awareness that travels up your spine when someone's watching you. I'd learned to trust that instinct in the months since leaving. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd, and my heart stopped. He stood 20 feet away, frozen mid-step like a photograph. Liam O'Connor, my ex-husband, dressed in dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that did nothing to disguise the lean muscle beneath. His black hair was slightly longer than I remembered, curling at his collar. Those green eyes, the color of sea glass I'd once told him, were locked on me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. For a moment, neither of us moved. The market noise faded to white static. All I could hear was my own pulse hammering in my ears. He looked different. Thinner, maybe. Tired. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. And something in his expression I'd never seen during our marriage. Something that looked almost like pain. Then his gaze dropped. I watched the progression of his realization in slow motion. His eyes traveled from my face to my shoulders to the hand I'd instinctively pressed against my abdomen. The oversized cardigan suddenly felt transparent under his scrutiny. His face went white, then red, then settled into a careful blankness that I recognized from his business dealings, the mask he wore when processing information he didn't want others to see him processing. Saoirse. My real name on his lips, not the professional nickname. The Irish pronunciation he'd learned from my grandmother, soft and lilting. Saoirse, is that... I didn't wait for him to finish. Muscle memory took over. The same survival instinct that had driven me from our bed 6 months ago when I discovered the truth. I turned and ran. Well, ran was generous, waddled quickly. Pregnancy had many indignities, and athletic escape wasn't on the list of things it made easier. "Sairsa, wait!" His voice carried over the market din. I pushed through the crowd, my heart racing. Not here. Not now. Not like this. I'd imagined this confrontation 100 times in the sleepless hours of early pregnancy. What I'd say, how I'd explain, whether I'd tell him at all. None of those imagined scenarios involved a farmer's market and orchids, and my body already betraying the secret I'd kept. A hand caught my elbow, gentle but firm. I spun, ready to jerk away, but Liam had already released me, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. 2 men in dark suits flanked him at a respectful distance. Finn and another security guard whose name I'd never learned. Always the protection. Always the reminder of who he really was. "Please," Liam said, his voice low and urgent. "Just talk to me. 5 minutes. I have nothing to say to you." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Then just listen." His eyes searched my face with desperate intensity. "Please, Sairsa. You owe me that much." The audacity of it sparked anger in my chest. "I don't owe you anything. We're divorced, remember? You signed the papers. Because you asked me to. Because you disappeared in the middle of the night with no explanation beyond a goddamn note saying you couldn't do this anymore." His composure was cracking. 6 months, Sairsa. 6 months of wondering if you were alive, if you were safe, if I'd done something. He stopped, jaw clenched. "And now you're here. Pregnant. With my child." "It wasn't a question. You don't know that," I said, hating how weak the lie sounded. His laugh was bitter. "Don't insult both of us. I know you, remember? Or I thought I did." His gaze dropped again to my abdomen. How far along? I wanted to lie. Wanted to claim it was someone else's. That I'd moved on. That the baby growing inside me had nothing to do with him. But I'd never been good at lying. And the timeline was too obvious anyway. 5 months, I admitted. I watched him do the math. 5 months pregnant meant conception around 6.5 months ago, which meant the last time we'd been together. The night before, I found the blood-stained shirt in his private office. The night before, I'd overheard him on the phone discussing a problem that needed to be handled permanently. The night before, my entire world revealed itself to be built on sand and secrets. "My child," he said softly, something fierce and possessive flickering in his eyes. "Our child." No. The word came out sharper than intended. "My child. Mine. You gave up any rights when you lied to me about who you are, what you do." Pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. "I never lied to you." "Omission is lying, Liam. You let me believe you were a legitimate businessman. Import-export, you said. Boring corporate stuff you didn't want to burden me with." I laughed, the sound harsh. "Meanwhile, you were—" I couldn't finish. Couldn't say the words aloud in this public space. "We're not having this conversation here," he said, glancing around at the curious onlookers who'd started to notice our confrontation. "My car is 2 blocks away. Come with me. We'll talk somewhere private." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Sairsa, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. "You want me to be reasonable? I spent a year married to a man I didn't really know. I woke up every day wondering if the phone call that came in at midnight meant someone was dead. I smiled at charity events while men who'd killed people stood 3 feet away discussing wine pairings. Don't talk to me about reasonable." Liam's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. "You're making a scene. I don't care." But I did. People were definitely watching now, and the last thing I needed was attention. I'd worked hard to disappear, to become invisible. One viral video of Liam O'Connor's mysterious ex-wife, pregnant and arguing with him at a farmer's market, would undo all of that. "Fine." He stepped back, giving me space. "Not here. Not now." But this conversation isn't over, Saoirse. That's my child you're carrying. You gave up. I gave up nothing. Steel entered his voice. You left. You chose to walk away. I would have given you anything, been anything you needed. But you didn't give me that chance. The unfairness of it stung. I couldn't stay in that life. I wouldn't. I know. Something in his expression softened. I know why you left. I've had 6 months to figure it out, to understand what you must have discovered. But Saoirse, if you think I'm going to let my child grow up without me, without my protection... He stopped, visibly reining himself in. We need to talk. Really talk. About the baby, about what happens next. There's nothing to discuss. I'm having this baby alone. I don't need your money or your protection or anything from you. You're living in a studio apartment in a neighborhood where 3 break-ins happened last month alone, he said quietly. You're working freelance for museums, barely making rent, and you're pregnant with my child, which means you're now a target for anyone who wants to hurt me. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. No one knows. No one knew until 5 minutes ago. But I found you by accident at a farmer's market, Saoirse. How long before someone else does? Before one of my enemies puts together who you are, where you went, and uses it against both of us? He was right. I hated that he was right. This isn't over, Liam said again, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. I'll give you space to think, but we will talk. Soon. And Saoirse? He waited until I met his eyes. I'm not letting you disappear again. Not this time. Not with my child. He turned and walked away, his security detail falling into step behind him. I stood frozen in the middle of the farmer's market, my hand pressed protectively over the swell of my abdomen, watching the father of my baby disappear into the crowd. And for the first time in 6 months, I wondered if running had been the right choice after all. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, every footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. Liam knew where I lived, or at least he could find out within hours. The man had resources I'd only begun to understand during our marriage, connections that reached into every corner of the city. By dawn, I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then I opened my apartment door to grab the Sunday paper and nearly tripped over the package sitting on my doormat. No shipping label, no return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting on cream-colored cardstock. Inside, I found prenatal vitamins, the expensive kind my doctor had recommended but I couldn't afford, a cashmere blanket in soft gray, and a card with a single sentence. Take care of yourself. Take care of our baby. L. My hands shook as I closed the door and locked both deadbolts. He'd been here, or sent someone here, to my home, the one place I'd felt safe since leaving. The phone rang 20 minutes later. Unknown number. Don't hang up, Liam's voice came through before I could. I'm not calling to pressure you. I just need to know you got the package safely. You had someone come to my apartment in the middle of the night? My voice was sharp with anger masking fear. No one came to your apartment, Saoirse. I left it myself. At 6 a.m., you were asleep. A pause. You still sleep with your window cracked, even in winter. And you kicked the covers off around 4 a.m. The intimate knowledge felt like a violation. You watched me sleep? I checked that you were safe, he corrected. There's a difference. Your building's security is a joke. The back entrance doesn't even lock properly. Anyone could walk in. So you did. Great. That makes it so much better. I left vitamins and a blanket, not a threat. You need to take better care of yourself. His voice softened. Are you eating enough? Getting enough rest? The first trimester can be... I'm in my second trimester, and I'm fine. I don't need you checking on me. Clearly you do, if you're living in a building where the locks don't work. Frustration crept into his tone. Saoirse, I meant what I said yesterday. You're in danger. Maybe not immediately, but eventually someone's going to notice you're back, notice you're pregnant, and do the math. When that happens, if that happens, I'll deal with it. Like you're dealing with it now, by pretending you can just blend into a normal life? He exhaled sharply. You were my wife for a year. People know who you are. The art world knows you. Anyone who wants to find you can find you. Then I'll disappear again. Change my name. Move to another city. With a newborn? While recovering from childbirth? Be realistic. I hated that every point he made was valid. Hated that 6 months of careful invisibility could unravel so quickly. Hated that the baby inside me, my baby, was now leverage in a world I'd fled from. What do you want, Liam? I asked tiredly. Why are you really calling? Silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I want you to come home, to the penthouse, where you'll be safe, where I can make sure nothing happens to you or the baby. That's not my home anymore. It's the safest place in the city. 24-hour security, private elevator, guards at every entrance. No one gets in without clearance. He paused. I'm not asking you to come back to me, Saoirse. I'm asking you to accept protection. For the baby's sake. And in exchange for this protection, what? I become your prisoner again? You were never my prisoner. Sharp now. You chose to leave. That was your choice. I'm giving you another choice. Come somewhere safe until the baby's born, or stay where you are and hope no one finds you. The ultimatum hung between us. I closed my eyes, one hand on my abdomen where the baby had started its morning gymnastics routine. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow. I'll call you at noon. The line went dead. I spent the rest of Sunday in a haze of indecision, sketching orchids for the museum commission, but unable to focus. My pencil kept wandering to the margins, drawing faces I didn't intend. Strong jawlines, green eyes, hands I remembered too well. Liam showed up at 6 with Thai food and a bottle of sparkling cider. You look like hell, she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. Let me guess, he found you. How did you? Because you've been texting me in monosyllables all day, which you only do when you're spiraling. She set the food on my tiny kitchen counter. Talk. What happened? I told her everything. The farmer's market, the package, the phone call, Liam's offer of protection that felt more like a gilded cage. Nayev listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. He's not wrong, she finally said. About the danger, I mean. Whose side are you on? Yours, always yours. Which is why I'm telling you that pretending you can just raise this baby in obscurity isn't realistic. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Willa, I love you, but you're 6 months away from having a newborn. You're barely making rent now. What happens when you can't work for weeks? When you need childcare? I'll figure it out. How? You left everything behind. Your savings, your connections, your support system. You're living on freelance illustration jobs and pretending that's sustainable. Her voice gentled. I'm not saying go back to him. I'm saying consider that he's offering resources you're going to need. At what cost? That's what you need to find out. Talk to him. Not on the phone. In person. Lay out your terms. You're not some helpless girl anymore, Willa. You're a woman who left a powerful man and survived 6 months on your own. Walk in there knowing your worth. Her words stayed with me through a sleepless night. By the time Liam called at noon the next day, I'd made my decision. I'll meet with you, I said before he could speak. In person. Somewhere neutral. We discuss terms, and I decide if I can live with them. Agreed. There's a private dining room at Marcello's. Somewhere public, I interrupted. Where there are witnesses. A pause. The Botanical Gardens. Tomorrow at 2. The Orchid Conservatory. Despite everything, I smiled slightly. He remembered. We'd had one of our first real conversations there, debating the ethics of removing rare specimens from their natural habitats for conservation purposes. I'd argued for preservation in the wild. He'd argued for protecting them from human destruction by any means necessary. Neither of us had changed our minds by the end, but we'd laughed about it over dinner afterward. Fine, I agreed. Tomorrow at 2. The Kensington Botanical Gardens sprawled across 15 acres on the north edge of the city, a living museum of plant species from 6 continents. The Orchid Conservatory sat at its heart, a glass and steel structure housing over 300 varieties, maintained at precise temperature and humidity levels. I arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to scope out the space before Liam appeared. The conservatory was moderately busy, couples strolling hand in hand, photographers capturing close-ups of blooms, a school group clustered around their teacher as she explained pollination. Normal people doing normal things. I envied them. Liam arrived exactly at 2, dressed in dark slacks and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Finn followed at a discreet distance, positioning himself near the entrance. My ex-husband's gaze found me immediately, tracking me as I stood beside a display of Cattleya orchids. "You came," he said quietly, stopping a respectful 3 feet away. "I said I would." I kept my voice neutral. "Let's walk." We moved through the conservatory slowly, the air heavy with moisture and the sweet scent of hundreds of blooms. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. I studied the plants rather than look at him. Phalaenopsis, Dendrobium, rare Pfeifia petalum with their distinctive pouched lips. "You've been eating better," Liam observed. "You look healthier than yesterday." "The vitamins you sent, they're helping. An olive branch." "Thank you." He nodded, something easing in his shoulders. "How are you feeling? Any complications?" "None. The baby's healthy. Active, actually. Kicks constantly." "May I?" His hand hovered near my abdomen, seeking permission. I hesitated, then nodded. His palm settled gently over the swell where our child grew. Almost immediately, the baby kicked, a firm thump against his hand. Liam's expression transformed, a smile breaking across his face with such pure joy that something cracked in my chest. "Strong," he murmured. "Takes after their mother. Or their stubborn father." His eyes met mine. "I'm sorry, Saoirse. For everything you didn't know. Everything I didn't tell you." "Which part? The part where you run an organized crime syndicate? Or the part where you let me believe we had a normal marriage?" "All of it." He withdrew his hand. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping you separate from the business. I thought if you didn't know the details, you'd be safe, untouchable. Instead, I was just blind. Yes. No excuses. You deserve the truth. I should have trusted you with it." We walked past a display of Vanda orchids, their roots exposed and hanging in air. Beautiful, but vulnerable. "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Trust me, I mean." Liam was quiet for a long moment. "Because everyone I've ever trusted with the whole truth has either betrayed me or gotten hurt. My father trusted his business partner. The man sold him out to the feds and disappeared with half the operation's funds. My sister trusted her fiancé with who we really were. He tried to use it against her, threatened to expose everything unless we paid him off. What happened to him? He learned that threatening an O'Connor has consequences." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I didn't want that for you, Saoirse. I wanted you to be separate, clean. untouched by all of it. But I wasn't separate. I was your wife. I lived in that penthouse, attended those events, smiled at people who'd committed crimes. I just didn't know I was doing it. I know. He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. And now you do know. So here's what I'm offering. Move into the guest wing of the penthouse. Separate entrance, separate space. You won't see me unless you choose to. But you'll have security, medical care, anything you or the baby needs. For how long? Until the baby's born. After that, we discuss custody arrangements like civilized divorced people. I studied his face, looking for the deception. And you'll stay away? No trying to rekindle things? Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or resignation. If that's what you want. It is. Then yes, I'll stay away. He pulled a key card from his pocket. This is for the private elevator to the guest wing. Finn will show you the apartment tomorrow if you agree. Everything's already set up. Bedroom, studio space for your work, nursery. You won't want for anything. Except freedom. You'll have freedom. You can come and go as you please. Work on your commissions. Visit friends. Live your life. The only requirement is that security knows where you are at all times, and you don't take unnecessary risks. Define unnecessary. A ghost of a smile. No solo midnight walks in dangerous neighborhoods. No meeting strangers from the internet. Common sense precautions. I turned the key card over in my hands, feeling its weight. This was the choice then. Continue struggling in a studio apartment, always looking over my shoulder, or accept the protection of a man I'd fled from. For my pride, or for my baby. The baby kicked again, as if voting. I have conditions, I said finally. Name them. I finish my current museum commission. I maintain my professional relationships and identity as Willa Brennan, not Saoirse O'Connor. And if at any point I feel uncomfortable or unsafe, I can leave. No arguments, no following, no surveillance. Liam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. With one addition, if you're leaving for any reason other than feeling unsafe from me or my people, you tell me where you're going, just so I know you're not in danger. It was reasonable, more reasonable than I'd expected. Fine, I agreed. When do I move in? Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow? This weekend? Tomorrow, I decided. I'll pack tonight. Relief washed over his features. Thank you, Saoirse, for trusting me this much. I'm not trusting you, Liam. I'm accepting help for our baby. There's a difference. I know. He stepped back, giving me space. But it's a start. As I walked out of the conservatory, the keycard burning a hole in my pocket, I wondered if I'd just made the best decision of my life or the worst. Time would tell which. The guest wing of Liam's penthouse was nothing like I remembered from our marriage. Then, the space had been bare. A single guest bedroom used maybe twice in 12 months. Sterile and unwelcoming. Now it had been transformed into something that felt designed specifically for me. The main living area had floor-to-ceiling windows facing east, flooding the space with morning light. My easel stood near the window, positioned exactly where I'd want it for natural illumination. The shelves were stocked with my preferred watercolor paper, pencils still in their packaging, reference books on botanical illustration I'd mentioned wanting, but never purchased. The nursery's through here, Finn said, gesturing to a door off the bedroom. His tone was carefully neutral, professional. We'd never been friendly during my marriage. He'd been Liam's man, and I'd been the wife who asked too many questions. The nursery took my breath away. Soft sage walls, white furniture with clean lines, a rocking chair positioned beside windows overlooking the city. A mobile of hand-painted flowers hung above the crib. Orchids, I realized. Each one meticulously accurate to species. He hired a botanical artist, Finn said quietly. Sent her photos of flowers from your portfolio. Wanted them perfect. I ran my fingers over the mobile, watching the delicate blooms spin. When did he do all this? Started 2 days after you left. Worked on it for months. Finn's expression remained neutral. Hoped you'd come back. When you didn't, he kept it anyway. Said maybe someday you'd at least visit, and he wanted you to feel welcome. The implication settled over me like a weight. Liam had been preparing for my return, or for the possibility of it, for 6 months. Long before he knew about the baby. Where is he? I asked. I expected him to be here. Business in Philadelphia. Won't be back until Friday. Finn handed me a folder. Schedule of the building's security protocols. List of approved vendors who can access the guest wing. Direct numbers for the medical team. Dr. Maeve Chen is your new OB. Best in the city. First appointment's scheduled for tomorrow if you're comfortable with that. I flipped through the folder, impressed despite myself by the thoroughness. Every detail anticipated, every need addressed. And Liam? Has his own wing on the opposite side of the penthouse. You'll share the main common areas. Kitchen, library, gym, but only if you choose to. There's a kitchenette here too. Finn paused. He meant what he said about giving you space. After Finn left, I stood in the center of my new living room, taking it all in. The carved bookshelf held my favorites. Field guides to Irish wildflowers, botanical illustration techniques, novels I'd mentioned loving once in passing. The throw pillows on the couch were the exact shade of dusty rose I preferred. It felt like coming home. Which terrified me, because this wasn't home. Couldn't be home. This was a temporary arrangement, protection, until the baby arrived. I repeated that to myself as I unpacked my meager belongings. Clothes that barely filled a quarter of the walk-in closet. Art supplies that looked shabby next to the pristine materials Liam had provided. The few books I'd taken when I fled. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Finn says you're settling in. Take whatever time you need. Kitchen is fully stocked. L. I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally typed, "Thank you for the space. The nursery is beautiful." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, it's for our baby. Seemed important to get it right. I set the phone down without responding, unsure what to say. The Liam I'd known during our marriage had been generous but distant about such details. Happy to provide anything I wanted, but rarely involved in the selection. This attention to specifics, this care, felt different. Dr. Maeve Chen turned out to be a tiny woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that I immediately appreciated. She examined me thoroughly in her private office downtown, Finn waiting discreetly in the lobby. "Everything looks good," she pronounced, reviewing the ultrasound images. "Baby's measuring right on track. Do you want to know the sex?" I hesitated. "Not yet. Maybe later." She nodded, making notes. "Any complications? Pain, bleeding, unusual symptoms?" "No, just tired a lot. And the baby kicks constantly." "That's good. Active is healthy." She set down her tablet, giving me her full attention. "Liam mentioned you've been under some stress. Anything I should know about? Anxiety, depression, concerns about the pregnancy?" "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Saoirse." Her use of my real name was gentle but firm. "I know your medical history. I know you left 6 months ago. I know coming back, even temporarily, can't be easy. My job is your health and the baby's health. That includes mental health. So I'm asking again, how are you really doing?" The genuine concern in her voice cracked something open. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Of what happens after the baby's born, of whether I made the right choice coming back, of whether I can do this alone if I leave again. Those are reasonable fears. Have you considered therapy? I shook my head. I'd like to refer you to someone. Specializes in high-risk situations, works with women in complicated circumstances. No pressure, but the offer's there. She handed me a card. And Saoirse? For what it's worth, Liam's been calling me weekly for the past 2 months, asking about pregnancy complications, what symptoms to watch for, how to support someone carrying a child. He's been educating himself. 2 months? But he only found out about the baby 3 days ago. Dr. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. He didn't know it was his baby, but he knew you'd left, and he was worried you might be pregnant. Asked me to keep an eye out, contact him if you reached out for prenatal care through any of the networks he has access to. The implications of that settled over me. Liam had been searching, yes, but he'd also been preparing, just in case. Learning, trying to understand what I might be going through. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I think you deserve to know that the man asking you to stay is taking this seriously. Whether that changes anything for you is your business. But as your doctor, I want you to have all the information. I returned to the penthouse that evening to find a note slipped under my door. Dinner in the main kitchen at 7 if you're interested. No pressure. I almost ignored it. Almost stayed in my wing. Ate from the kitchenette. Maintained the separation. But curiosity, and the smell of something delicious wafting down the hallway, drew me out. Liam stood at the stove in the expansive kitchen, stirring something in a large pot. He'd changed from his usual suit into jeans and a dark blue Henley, his feet bare on the heated tile floor. He looked up when I entered, a careful smile crossing his face. You came. I was promised food. I kept my tone light. What are you making? Colcannon, your grandmother's recipe. He ladled the traditional Irish potato dish into bowls, the steam carrying the scent of butter, cabbage, and green onions. Figured it might help you feel more settled. I stared at the bowl he set in front of me, emotion tightening my throat. Gran's colcannon had been my comfort food growing up, the dish she'd make when I was sad or sick or overwhelmed. I'd mentioned it to Liam exactly once, early in our marriage, in passing. He'd remembered. Thank you, I said quietly, picking up my fork. We ate in silence for several minutes. Finally, Liam spoke. Dr. Chen says you're healthy. The baby, too. She told you about my appointment? Only the basics, medical privacy and all that. He took a drink of water. I appreciate you seeing her. I know switching doctors mid-pregnancy isn't ideal. She's good, thorough. I paused. She mentioned you've been researching pregnancy. A faint flush colored his cheeks. Seemed important to understand what you'd be going through. Even when you thought the baby might not be yours? Especially then. If you were pregnant and alone, I wanted to know what you'd need. What I could provide if you'd let me. His gaze met mine. I know you don't want to hear this, Saoirse, but I never stopped caring about you. Even after you left. Even when I didn't know where you were. You could have looked harder, found me sooner. I could have. I didn't. He set down his fork. You left a note asking for space, saying you needed to be away from the life. I gave you that. Kept tabs enough to know you were alive and safe, but I didn't intrude. Figured if you wanted to come back, you would. Until you found me at the farmer's market. That was chance, pure coincidence. I was there buying flowers for my sister's birthday. He smiled slightly. Ironic, isn't it? If I'd gone to any other market that day, we wouldn't be here. I'd still be hiding. He'd still be searching. And our baby would be born into a situation even more complicated than this one. Liam, I need to understand something. I pushed my empty bowl away. The life you lead, the business you run, it's dangerous. People get hurt. You've hurt people. How am I supposed to let our child grow up in that world? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. A nervous habit I recognized from late-night business calls during our marriage. Fair question. Honest answer. I don't know yet. He looked at me directly. The business is what it is. It's my legacy, my responsibility. I can't just walk away. Too many people depend on it, and the vacuum would create chaos that'd be worse than what exists now. So our child grows up surrounded by criminals. Our child grows up surrounded by family, he corrected. Extended family that, yes, operates outside conventional law, but also family that protects its own, that values loyalty, that takes care of people the system has failed. That's a pretty way of describing organized crime. It's the truth as I see it. You want a different truth? Fine. Yes. I've done things that would send me to prison. Yes. People have gotten hurt, though I've worked damn hard to minimize casualties and avoid violence when possible. And yes, our child will grow up knowing all of that, understanding the moral complexity. He leaned forward. But they'll also grow up knowing their father loves them, that he chose to be part of their life, even when it would have been easier to let them go. Is that what you think I wanted? For you to let them go? I think you wanted freedom. From me. From the life. From everything that scared you about what you discovered. And I'm trying to give you that freedom while still being a father. It's a balance I'm figuring out as I go. I studied his face, looking for deception or manipulation. Found only exhaustion and something that looked like genuine hope. I want things in writing, I said finally. Custody arrangements. Financial support. What happens if either of us wants to change the terms? Clear legal documentation. Already drafted. My lawyer will send it over tomorrow. He pulled a folder from the counter behind him. But here's the preliminary version. Read it, make changes, tell me what you need. I flipped through the pages, surprised by the generosity of the terms. Joint custody with primary residence flexibility. Full financial support regardless of whether we live together. College funds, trust accounts, medical coverage. And a clause that caught my attention. In the event that Saoirse Brennan O'Connor chooses to reside separately, Liam O'Connor agrees to maintain appropriate distance, except for matters directly concerning the child's welfare. You actually put it in writing, I murmured. The promise to stay away. You asked for it. I'm giving it. He stood, collecting our empty bowls. But Saoirse, I hope you know that just because I'm promising space doesn't mean I've stopped wanting you back. It just means I'm willing to wait until you're ready. And if I'm never ready? Pain flickered across his face. Then I'll learn to live with that, for our baby's sake. Living with Liam, though not technically with him, settled into an unexpected rhythm over the following weeks. True to his word, he maintained distance. We'd cross paths in the shared kitchen some mornings, exchange polite greetings in the library when I came to browse his extensive collection of botanical texts, occasionally find ourselves in the gym at the same time. But he never pushed, never intruded, just existed in the same space with careful courtesy. It was driving me slowly insane. Not because I wanted him to push, I told myself firmly, but because the version of Liam I'd fled from had been controlling, secretive, always managing situations to his advantage. This Liam, the one who made colcannon from my grandmother's recipe and left books about pregnancy on the shared coffee table with relevant chapters bookmarked, was harder to categorize, harder to keep walled out of my heart. You're 6 months along now, Neve observed during one of her visits to the penthouse. She'd been surprisingly supportive of my choice to move in, though her eyes had widened at the sheer luxury of the space. How are you feeling? Like I'm carrying a gymnast, I rubbed the spot where tiny feet kept jabbing my ribs. And confused. About? Everything. Liam. This arrangement. Whether I'm making the right choice. I gestured vaguely at the nursery. He's been perfect, Neve. Too perfect. It's unnerving. Maybe he's just trying to be what you need. Or he's playing a long game, waiting for me to let my guard down. Neve gave me a look. Or you're looking for reasons to keep him at arm's length because you're terrified of getting hurt again. Before I could respond, a knock interrupted us. Liam stood in the doorway, dressed for business in a charcoal suit, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt. Neve, good to see you. He nodded politely at my friend, then turned to me. Saoirse, there's a situation I need to discuss with you. When you have a moment. The word situation in Liam's vocabulary rarely meant anything good. Neve picked up on the tension immediately. I should head out anyway, she said, gathering her bag. Call me later? After she left, Liam gestured for me to sit. He remained standing, a sure sign that whatever he had to say made him uncomfortable. What kind of situation? I asked, keeping my voice calm despite the anxiety rising in my chest. The kind I hoped to avoid but knew was inevitable. He pulled out his phone, showing me a photo. This was taken yesterday outside the Botanical Gardens. The photographer works for Declan Murphy. The photo showed me clearly, standing beside the Orchid Conservatory, one hand on my very pregnant belly, my face in profile. There was no mistaking my condition or identity. Murphy, I repeated, the name familiar from overheard conversations during my marriage. Your rival. More than rival. Enemy. Liam's jaw tightened. He's been trying to take over territory on the South Docks for 2 years. We've managed to keep things cold, but this... He gestured to the photo. This changes the equation. Because now he knows you have a weakness. Because now he knows I have something irreplaceable that he could hurt to hurt me. Liam sat down across from me, his expression serious. Saoirse, I need to increase your security. Finn will be with you whenever you leave the building, plus at least one additional guard. I'm also moving my office here to work from home more often. You're saying I'm a target. I'm saying you're my priority. And Murphy knows that now. He leaned forward. I've spent the past 6 months keeping you invisible. That's over. So we adapt. The clinical assessment of my value as leverage should have angered me. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The kind that comes when the worst thing you feared finally arrives. What would he do? If he got to me? Nothing good. Murphy's not subtle. He'd use you to force my hand on the docks deal, probably demand I step back from 3 other territories as well. Or... He stopped, jaw working. Or he'd hurt you to prove he could, to establish dominance. Liam's voice went flat, emotionless in the way I'd learned meant he was barely controlling rage. That's not happening. I'll burn every bridge, call in every favor, start a war if necessary. But he won't touch you. You can't start a war over me. Watch me. Steel in his eyes. You and that baby are my line in the sand, Saoirse. Murphy can have the docks, the territories, everything else, but you're off limits. I stared at him, processing the casual way he'd just offered to dismantle pieces of his empire. You're serious. Completely. I've already sent word through intermediaries. You're protected. Anyone who comes near you answers to me personally. He pulled out another photo. This one showing a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes. That's Murphy. You need to recognize him. Avoid him if you ever see him in public. Liam, this is insane. You're talking about restructuring your entire operation because you matter more. Simple. Absolute. The business exists to provide for family, to protect people I care about. What's the point of any of it if I can't keep you safe? The declaration hung between us. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was being irrational, that I wasn't worth this disruption. But the look in his eyes stopped me. Fierce protectiveness mixed with something softer, something that looked like the man I'd fallen in love with before I knew what he really was. "I need air," I said, standing abruptly. "A walk. Somewhere that isn't this penthouse. I'll come with you. Liam, non-negotiable. Either I come, or you take Finn plus 2 additional guards. Your choice." His tone left no room for argument. We compromised. Liam and Finn accompanied me to the rooftop garden, a private space accessible only to residents of the penthouse floor. Finn positioned himself near the elevator, while Liam and I walked among the planters of herbs and flowering shrubs. "You redesigned this," I observed, noting the additions since I'd last been here. "These weren't here before." "Added them 3 months ago. Thought maybe if the space was more appealing, you might use it when you came back." He stopped beside a planter of Irish wildflowers, primrose, bluebells, foxglove. "Imported the seeds from County Kerry, my grandmother's county. I remembered you talking about visiting as a child, how she'd walk you through the meadows, teaching you flower names in Irish." He touched a bluebell gently. "Coin licora." The Irish name, perfectly pronounced, caught me off guard. "You learned Irish?" Enough to name the flowers seemed important. He straightened, looking out over the city sprawled below us. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Saoirse. With you, with how I handled our marriage. Keeping you separate from the truth was supposed to protect you. Instead, it just meant you couldn't trust me when you needed to most. So this..." I gestured at the flowers, the security measures, the careful distance he'd maintained. "This is you trying to do better? This is me trying to be worthy of a second chance I might never get." His voice was quiet. "I know you don't love me anymore. I know you might never trust me again. But I need you to know that I'm done lying by omission. Ask me anything about the business, about what I do, and I'll tell you the truth." It was an opening I'd wanted for months, a chance to understand the man I'd married. "The night before I left," I said carefully, "I overheard you on the phone. You said someone needed to be handled permanently." "What did that mean?" Liam didn't flinch from the question. Declan Murphy's nephew had assaulted 3 women who worked at one of my legitimate clubs. The police wouldn't touch it. His family's connected. Victims too scared to testify. So I handled it. Handled it how? Made sure he understood that behavior has consequences. Broke his hands so he'd think twice before putting them on another woman without consent. Then sent him to his uncle with a message that my people are protected, and next time would be worse. He met my gaze steadily. "Is that what you wanted to hear? That I'm capable of violence when someone I'm responsible for is hurt?" I wanted honesty. My voice was steady despite the churning in my stomach. "And yes, it bothers me that you broke someone's hands, but it bothers me more that you thought I couldn't handle knowing about it. I thought you'd leave if you knew. I left anyway, because I found out in the worst way possible. By accident, through fear, with no context." I moved closer to him. "Liam, I'm not naive enough to think you're a good man by conventional standards, but I need to know you're a man who has lines he won't cross, who chooses violence only when other options are exhausted." "I have lines," he said. "I don't hurt kids. I don't hurt innocents. I don't tolerate sexual assault or domestic violence in any operation under my control. And I don't deal in human trafficking, drugs that target kids, or anything that exploits the vulnerable." He paused. "Everything else is negotiable depending on circumstances." That's not exactly reassuring. It's the truth, which is what you asked for. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension he carried. "I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not, Saoirse. I run an organization that operates outside the law. Sometimes that requires violence, but I'm not cruel for cruelty's sake, and I don't take pleasure in causing pain." I studied his face, looking for the monster I'd convinced myself I'd married. Found instead a tired man carrying the weight of impossible choices. "The baby kicked," I said abruptly. "Want to feel?" Surprise flickered across his features, followed by something like hope. "You're sure?" I took his hand, placing it where our child had been performing acrobatics all morning. Almost immediately, a firm kick landed against his palm. Liam's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Strong," he murmured, the same word he'd used before. His hand remained gentle, reverent. "God, Saoirse, we made this life." "I know." My hand covered his, both of us connected to the child we'd created. "And I'm terrified of what kind of world we're bringing them into." "Me too." The admission was quiet. "But I promise you, this baby will be protected, loved, given every opportunity to choose their own path, even if it's not the one I'd choose for them." His eyes met mine. "And you'll be protected too, whether you choose to stay after they're born or not." The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility. Then the baby kicked again, harder, and we both laughed at the enthusiasm. "Definitely takes after you," Liam said, smiling, stubborn and determined. "Or after their father, who never learned when to quit. Guilty." He withdrew his hand reluctantly. "We should head inside. You've been on your feet too long." As we walked back toward the elevator, his hand hovering at the small of my back without quite touching, I realized something had shifted. The wall I'd built between us had developed a crack, not large enough to call trust, but enough to let through the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way to something real. Something built on truth instead of omission, on choice instead of fear. The baby kicked again, as if agreeing. Dr. Chen's office had become a sanctuary of sorts over the following weeks. Every appointment brought reassurance that the baby was healthy, growing perfectly, blissfully unaware of the complications surrounding their arrival into the world. 7 months, Dr. Chen said, reviewing my chart. "Everything looks good. How are you feeling?" "Like I'm smuggling a basketball," I admitted, "and sleeping is impossible. The baby's most active between midnight and 3 a.m. "Liam mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping." She made a note. "He called yesterday asking about safe sleep aids." "He calls you about me?" "About once a week. Always with good questions. Usually things he's researched himself and wants confirmation on." She smiled slightly. "It's unusual. Most fathers-to-be don't engage to this degree, especially in your situation." "My situation. A polite euphemism for divorced woman living with ex-husband for protection while pregnant with his child." "He's been attentive," I acknowledged. "Sometimes overwhelmingly so." "Overwhelmingly how?" I thought about the past few weeks. How Liam had started working primarily from home, his office door always open if I needed anything. How he'd begun joining me for breakfast most mornings, comfortable silences over coffee and toast. How he'd installed a custom easel by the window when he noticed me complaining about back pain from my old one. "It's harder to hate him when he's being thoughtful," I said finally. Dr. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "Do you want to hate him?" "It would be simpler." "Simpler isn't always better, especially not for co-parenting." She set down her tablet. "Saoirse, I'm going to speak as your doctor and as someone who's seen a lot of complicated situations. You don't have to forgive him for the past. You don't have to trust him completely. But you might want to consider that people can change, especially when properly motivated. And if he's just acting, playing a long game, then you'll figure it out. You're not the naive woman who married him anymore. You're stronger, more aware. Give yourself credit for that." I left the appointment thinking about her words. Was Liam playing a long game? Or was this really who he was when not hiding behind lies of omission? The question was answered, partially, when I returned to the penthouse to find chaos. Finn met me at the elevator, his usual calm replaced by tension. "Mrs. O'Connor, Saoirse, we have a situation. Liam's in his office handling it, but you should know." "What kind of situation?" "Murphy made a move. Hit one of our distribution centers this morning, grabbed 2 of our people." His jaw tightened. "He's demanding a meeting. Tonight." Cold washed through me. "Is anyone hurt?" "Not yet, but Murphy's making it clear he's got leverage." Finn hesitated. "He specifically mentioned you. Said he knows Liam's priorities have shifted." I pushed past him, heading toward Liam's office. Found him on the phone, his voice cold and controlled in a way that sent shivers down my spine. "Tell Murphy I'll meet him. Neutral location, my choice. And if either of those men is harmed before the meeting, the deal's off, and he gets war." He hung up, noticing me in the doorway. His expression immediately shifted to concern. "You shouldn't be here." Finn told me what happened. "This is because of me, isn't it? This is because Murphy's an opportunistic bastard who saw weakness and decided to exploit it." Liam stood, moving around the desk toward me. "This isn't your fault, Saoirse. But I'm the weakness he's exploiting." "You're not a weakness. You're—" He stopped, jaw working. "You're my priority. There's a difference." "Liam, you can't go to this meeting. It's obviously a trap." "I'm aware, which is why I'm taking precautions." He gestured to the detailed map spread across his desk, marked with routes and positions. "I've got 12 men positioned around the warehouse Murphy suggested. Finn will be with me, plus 4 others. We'll be covered. And if it's not enough, if Murphy—" I couldn't finish the thought. Liam's expression softened. He reached out, stopping just short of touching me. "May I?" I nodded, and his hand settled on my shoulder, warm and grounding. "I've been doing this for 15 years, he said quietly. "I've survived worse than Declan Murphy. I'll survive this." "You don't know that." "No," he admitted. "But I know I'm not leaving you and that baby alone. Which means I'm coming back from this meeting, and Murphy's going to understand that you're untouchable." The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified me. The casual way he discussed walking into danger, the assumption that Will alone could protect him. "Let me come with you," I said impulsively. "Absolutely not. Murphy wants leverage over you. If I'm there, it takes away his power. He can't threaten me if I'm right there, in public, where anything he does would be witnessed. Saoirse, you're 7 months pregnant. You're not going anywhere near Declan Murphy." Steel in his voice. "That's not negotiable. Neither is you walking into a trap alone." We stared at each other, deadlocked. Finally, Liam sighed. "I'm not alone. I have good people watching my back. And I have something Murphy doesn't. A reason to be careful, to think 3 steps ahead." His hand moved from my shoulder to cup my face gently. "You and this baby are my reason to come home safe. Trust me to do that." "I don't want to lose you," I whispered, the admission slipping out before I could stop it. Something fierce and tender crossed his face. "You won't. I promise." He left an hour later, dressed in dark clothes that helped him blend into shadows. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. Finn in the passenger seat, 2 additional SUVs following. The next 4 hours were torture. I tried to work on my illustration commission, but my hands shook too badly to hold a pencil steady. Tried to read, but couldn't focus on the words. Finally gave up and just paced. One hand on my swollen belly, the other clenching and unclenching rhythmically. Neve arrived around 9, summoned by a text I'd sent in desperation. "Still no word?" she asked, finding me wearing a path in the living room carpet. I shook my head. Finn's phone goes straight to voicemail. I can't reach anyone. Then no news is good news. If something had gone wrong, you'd know by now. Or everyone's dead and no one's left to tell me. Willa. She used my chosen name, the one I'd adopted when I fled. You need to calm down. This stress isn't good for the baby. As if on cue, the baby kicked hard enough to make me wince. I rubbed the spot, murmuring apologies. I can't lose him, I said quietly. I thought I could. Thought I'd moved on, that living without him was what I wanted. But sitting here, waiting, not knowing, my voice cracked. I love him, Niev. I never stopped. I just got better at lying to myself about it. She pulled me into a hug, careful of my belly. Then when he gets back, tell him that. What if he doesn't come back? He will. Men like Liam O'Connor don't go down easy. The sound of the elevator arriving sent my heart into my throat. I pulled away from Niamh, moving as quickly as my pregnant body allowed toward the foyer. Liam emerged looking tired but whole. A bruise was forming on his jaw, and his knuckles were scraped, but he was walking under his own power, Finn steady beside him. You're alive, I breathed, relief making me dizzy. Promised I would be. His eyes found mine, softening. Then he noticed my tear-stained face, the way I was shaking. Hey, I'm okay. We're all okay. I crossed to him, not caring about Finn or Niamh watching, and pressed my hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath my palm. You're hurt. Bruised ego mostly. Murphy got one good hit in before we explained the new terms of our arrangement. Liam's hand covered mine. Your hands are freezing. I was worried. I noticed. Something in his expression shifted, became more vulnerable. Serse, I need to tell you something. What happened tonight, what Murphy said, he knows how much you matter to me. He's figured out that you're not just the mother of my child. You're more than that. What did you tell him? The truth. That if he or anyone else touches you, there won't be negotiations or meetings. There will just be consequences. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. And that I'm restructuring my operations. Stepping back from the violent side of things. Focusing on the legitimate businesses. I stared at him. You're leaving the organization. Not leaving, changing my role. I've spent 15 years building an empire, Saoirse. It's time to let others handle the day-to-day while I focus on what actually matters. Family, the legitimate operations, building something I'm not ashamed to pass down to our child. Because of me? Because of you. Because of them. His free hand moved to my belly. Because I'm tired of living in a world where the people I love are targets. So I'm changing that world, or at least my place in it. Finn cleared his throat. Boss, you should get cleaned up. I'll do the debrief tomorrow. After Finn and Niamh left, giving us privacy, Liam and I stood in the foyer, still touching, neither quite willing to move apart. You meant it? I asked. About restructuring everything? Every word. I've already started the process, promoting people I trust to handle enforcement and distribution, consolidating the legitimate holdings under one umbrella, creating distance between the illegal operations and family. He paused. It'll take time. Years, probably. But I'm done putting you in danger for the sake of business. Liam, you can't remake your entire life because of me. I'm not. I'm remaking it because I want a different future. One where my child doesn't grow up wondering if their father's going to come home from a meeting. Where my wife... He stopped, correcting himself. Where you don't have to be afraid. The word wife hung between us. I should have corrected him, reminded him we were divorced. Instead, I found myself asking, What if I want that future too? Hope flared in his eyes. Do you? I don't know yet, but I'm willing to consider it. I stepped back, needing space to think clearly. I need time, Liam. Time to see if this change is real. Time to trust that you mean what you're saying. How much time? Until the baby's born. Let's focus on being good co-parents first. Then we can discuss what comes after. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a rejection either. And from the smile that crossed Liam's face, he understood that. I can work with that, he said softly. 2 months passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, nursery preparations, and the strange domesticity that had grown between us. Liam kept his word about restructuring. I watched him delegate, step back, choose different paths than he would have before. And I watched myself fall deeper in love with the man he was becoming. At 39 weeks pregnant, I was miserable. Swollen ankles, constant back pain, and a baby who seemed determined to use my ribs as a jungle gym made every day a trial. You're sure you don't want to know the sex? Dr. Chen asked during what would be my final appointment before labor. Last chance. I glanced at Liam, who'd accompanied me to every appointment for the past month. He shrugged. Your call. Surprise me, I decided. We've waited this long. That night I couldn't sleep. The baby was particularly active and something felt different. A low, persistent ache that might have been normal pregnancy discomfort, or might have been the beginning of labor. I found Liam in the library, reading a book about infant care by lamplight. He looked up as I entered, immediately concerned. Can't sleep? Can't get comfortable. The baby's doing gymnastics. I lowered myself carefully into the chair across from him. What are you reading? He showed me the cover, a guide to first-year development. Trying to make sure I know what I'm doing. Don't want to mess this up. You'll be a good father, I said with certainty. You're already halfway there. Only halfway? You haven't changed a diaper yet. That's when the real test begins. He laughed, setting the book aside. Fair point. Though I've been practicing with the doll Dr. Chen provided, I'm getting pretty good at the swaddle. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind we'd developed over months of cohabitation. Outside, the city glittered, still awake, still moving, while we existed in this quiet bubble. Liam, I said quietly, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you regret it? Restructuring everything? Stepping back from the organization? You built that empire. It's been your life's work. He considered the question carefully. I regret that it took losing you to realize what actually mattered. But I don't regret the choice itself. The empire's still there. It's just in better hands now. Hands that aren't mine, which is honestly a relief. You seem lighter, I observed. Less burdened. I am. Turns out when you're not constantly managing criminal operations and watching your back for rivals, you have more energy for things like reading baby books and learning to swaddle. He smiled. Shocking discovery. Another cramp hit, stronger than before. I winced, breathing through it. Sersa? Liam was out of his chair in an instant. What's wrong? Nothing. Just Braxton Hicks, probably. But even as I said it, I felt a distinct pop, followed by wetness. I looked down at the puddle forming on Dr. Chen's very expensive chair. Oh. My water just broke. For a man who'd spent 15 years handling crisis situations with ice-cold calm, Liam's reaction was almost comical. He went pale, then red, then started grabbing random items. A throw pillow, the baby book, my water glass. Okay. We prepared for this. Hospital bag is by the door. Car is in the garage. Finn's on call. He was talking more to himself than to me. Dr. Chen's number is programmed. We have a plan. Liam. I waited until he looked at me, Breathe. He took a deep breath, visibly centering himself. Right. Breathing. How are you so calm? Because one of us has to be, and apparently it's not going to be the former crime lord. I stood carefully, feeling another contraction build. We should probably go now, though. The drive to the hospital was surreal. Liam kept one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine, while Finn drove at a pace that was technically legal, but only just. The contractions were coming regularly now, about 7 minutes apart, manageable but definitely real. You're doing great, Liam kept saying, his voice tight with tension. Just keep breathing. I am breathing. You're the one who looks like you might pass out. I'm fine. Another contraction hit. I squeezed his hand hard enough that he winced. Still fine? Totally fine. My hand doesn't need those bones. Despite the pain, I laughed. Dr. Chen met us at the hospital's private entrance, her expression calm and professional. Right on time. Let's get you settled. The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, exhaustion, and moments of surprising tenderness. Liam never left my side, holding my hand through contractions, wiping my forehead with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement when I was certain I couldn't do this anymore. You're the strongest person I know, he said during one particularly brutal contraction. You fled from me, built a new life, survived alone for months. This is nothing. This is not nothing, I gasped. This is terrible. Why did I agree to this? Because you wanted our baby. Remind me of that when I'm screaming at you later. I'll make a note. At 3:47 a.m. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Chen said the words I'd been desperate to hear. One more push. You're almost there. I pushed with everything I had left. And then finally the pressure released, replaced by a sound that made my heart stop and restart. A baby's cry, strong and indignant. It's a boy, Dr. Chen announced, placing the tiny, squirming bundle on my chest. Congratulations. A boy. Our son. I stared down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by love so fierce it stole my breath. He had Liam's dark hair and my nose, and his eyes were squeezed shut as he wailed his displeasure at being evicted from his comfortable home. Hey, little one, I murmured, tears streaming down my face. I'm your mom. I've been waiting so long to meet you. Liam stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder, the other gently touching our son's tiny fist. His face was wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. He's perfect, he whispered. Sayersa, he's absolutely perfect. After the medical team finished their checks and cleaned him up, a nurse placed our son in Liam's arms. I watched my ex-husband, the man who'd controlled a criminal empire with cold precision, hold our baby with such careful tenderness that something in my chest broke open. Hey, buddy, Liam said softly. I'm your dad, and I promise you, I'm going to do everything in my power to be worthy of that title. The baby's crying quieted, his tiny fist wrapping around Liam's finger with surprising strength. He knows you, I observed, exhausted but content. Of course he does. I've been talking to him for months. Liam looked up, meeting my eyes. Sayersa, thank you. For giving me this. For letting me be part of it. You are part of it. You're his father. I know. But you could have kept him from me. Could have run when you found out you were pregnant. Instead, you gave me a chance to be better. To be someone worthy of being his dad. He settled into the chair beside my bed, our son still cradled in his arms. I won't waste it. I watched them together, father and son, both with the same serious expression despite the baby being barely an hour old. Love and exhaustion made me reckless. Liam? I never stopped loving you. I was angry and scared and convinced I'd done the right thing by leaving. But I never stopped. He went very still. Serge. Let me finish. I pushed myself up slightly, ignoring my body's protests. I'm not saying we go back to how things were. We can't. Too much has changed. But maybe we could try to build something new. Something honest. Something real. Are you sure? His voice was careful, hope warring with disbelief. You don't have to say this now. You just gave birth. Your hormones have nothing to do with this. I've been thinking about it for weeks. Watching you change, seeing you with the baby, realizing that the man I fell in love with is still there. Just more honest now. I reached for his hand. I want to try again, Liam. If you do. If I do? He laughed, the sound slightly wet. Saoirse, I've been waiting for you to say that since the day you left. Yes. God. Yes. We'll try. We'll build something better. Our son chose that moment to make a small sound of protest, reminding us that he was still there, still the center of both our worlds. What should we name him? Liam asked, looking down at the bundle in his arms. I'd thought about this for months, cycling through names, rejecting each one. But looking at him now, at the baby who'd brought us back together, who represented possibility and second chances, one name felt right. Cian, I said softly. It means ancient or enduring in Irish. My grandmother's father's name. Liam's smile was brilliant. Cian O'Connor. It's perfect. The private garden behind our new house, not the penthouse, somewhere smaller, more suited to family life, was filled with the people who mattered most. Neve and Dr. Chen stood together near the flower beds I'd designed, chatting quietly. Finn kept watch from a respectful distance, old habits dying hard. And in the center of it all, Liam knelt before our 2-year-old son, helping him toddle toward me with rings clutched in his chubby fists. Come on, buddy, Liam encouraged. Bring them to Mama. Cian laughed. His green eyes, exactly like his father's, sparkling with mischief as he stumbled forward. I caught him, lifting him up as he presented the rings with great ceremony. Good job, baby, I praised, kissing his dark curls. Liam stood, taking one ring from our son's hand and slipping it onto my finger. It was simple, white gold with a small emerald, nothing like the enormous diamond from our first wedding. Second time's the charm? He asked softly. Third time, technically. But yes. I took the other ring, sliding it onto his hand. This time we're doing it right. No secrets, no lies, just us and the family we've built. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, while Cian clapped and Neve snapped photos. We'd renewed our vows in front of the people who knew the whole truth. The good, the bad, and the complicated. We'd chosen each other again, not out of fear or obligation, but because we'd learned what love really meant. It meant changing. It meant honesty. It meant building something real from the broken pieces of what came before. As Liam lifted Cian onto his shoulders, and we walked back toward the house, the three of us together, I knew we'd made it. Not to a perfect ending. Those didn't exist in real life. But to a real beginning. One built on truth, tested by time, and strong enough to last. Our son giggled, pulling at Liam's hair with sticky fingers. Liam pretended to grumble but couldn't hide his smile. And I thought about the scared woman who'd run from a farmer's market 6 months pregnant, certain she'd never trust again. Who'd learned instead that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. To fight for something worth saving. To choose love, even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated.